Welcome to Racing Recaps from Sail Magazine. I'm managing editor Lydia Mullen, and today we're going to be taking a look at leg one of the ocean race, which kicked off in Alicante, Spain on January 15th. If you're new to spectating ocean racing, the first thing you need to know about this race is that there are two fleets of boats competing for two different trophies. The primary one is sailing IMACA 60s around the globe, making stops in port cities along the way. Each IMACA 60 has 4 sailors on board and 1 onboard reporter. The 5 teams in this fleet are Holcim PRB, Biotherm, 11th Hour Racing Team, Guyot Environment, and Team Malizia. The second fleet is sailing something called the Sprint Cup, which is new to the ocean race this year. It involves sailing shorter legs on a boat called a Volvo Ocean 65, or a VO65. Each of these boats has 10 sailors and an onboard reporter, so even though it's a similarly sized boat, there are actually over twice as many people crewing this one. There's 6 VO65 teams: Miripuri, Ambersail 2, Yayo, Wind Whisperer, Viva Mexico, and Austrian Ocean Racing powered by Team Geneva. These boats might look pretty similar, but there are 2 easy ways to tell them apart. First, if you can clearly see 2 steering wheels, it's a VO65. The IMACAs have enclosed cockpits that keep them relatively dry, while the VO65s have open cockpits, and the sailors have to deal with this nonsense. Secondly, if the boats have these curved arms called foils, it's an IMACA 60. VO65s have dagger boards that go straight down instead of curving out. There are a lot of other important distinctions between these 2 classes, and we'll get to those in depth in another video. But I do need to mention that the IMACA 60s are all a little different from each other. So these distinctions won't necessarily be true for all IMACA 60s, but they are true for all of the ones in this race. Leg 1 isn't one of the longer legs of the race, but getting through the Mediterranean is actually one of the most difficult tactical portions of the race, even without forecasts of 35 knots that the team saw this year. 11th Hour Racing Team's navigator Simon Fisher explains.
I think what we're going to see in about, more or less 24 hours time is it's going to get pretty tricky straight off the bat. Like certainly getting out of the Mediterranean is always a challenge. We've got a lot of wind forecasts for the Albarán Sea. Gibraltar's always quite challenging, and then I think once we get past there, we'll be quite relieved to be out on the open ocean for a few days.
As you can see from all that red on the race tracker, both fleets had to contend with some extreme conditions almost immediately. The VO65 Ambersail 2 actually decided to take a risk and head south into the bigger winds in the hopes of getting ahead early. And then, less than 24 hours into the race, the real drama starts. As you can see here, Team Viva Mexico starts to peel off northwards towards the coast, and it turns out actually that their mainsail ripped and they had to divert to port to decide whether they could make repairs or replace it. Back on the water, everyone else pretty much sticks by the coast, hoping to find some protection from the wind, which was gusting over 50 knots at this point. That massive breeze means sail changes, lots of tacking, and slamming conditions.
There was more wind in the middle of the Med, and then a little less wind on the edge. And then when we came to the edge for the 4th or 5th time, whatever it was, and it happened to kind of coincide with a mountain range and some katabatic winds, or, we were expecting a little lighter air, and all of a sudden there's 50 knots. We were like, oh, okay, that's new.
Happy birthday.
The fleet finds a stripe along the coast where the wind speed is a little bit more manageable, and they tack back and forth to stay in that lane as they head west. And the VO65 fleet, Ambersail 2, gives up their gamble for the bigger winds and heads north to reconvene with the fleet, basically where they were before, but having suffered damage while battling those extreme winds down south, including a rip to their J2. So, on a whole, probably a net loss on this maneuver. In conditions like these, breakages are a huge risk, made all the worse because shore crews are not allowed to help with repairs during the stop in Cabo Verde. This means that any serious damage now could have ripple effects into leg 2. On the approach to the Strait of Gibraltar, we see this incredible tacking duel in the IMACA 60 fleet between Holcim PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team. It's almost like watching match racing, and as you know, in these conditions, on a boat this size, this kind of maneuvering takes a ton of energy that most of these crews don't have to spare. Meanwhile, Mary Puri decides to dip south to cruise through the strait with more breeze. The maneuver doesn't help them any more than it helped Amber sail too, but Mary Puri does manage to hang on to second place going into the Strait of Gibraltar. Unfortunately, as you can see from the tracker, a navigational error led them to crossing into this exclusion zone in the strait, and they'll be penalized for that. Once through the strait, things get a little simpler because instead of sailing into the wind, the teams are sailing at an angle to it, which is gentler on the boats and means fewer maneuvers and less slamming around. After that match racing-like tacking duel, Wholesome PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team lead the fleet south, with Team Malizia keeping the pressure on right behind them.
Very happy with the speed of the boat, very happy with the crew, very happy of where we are, even if it's definitely not finished.
We've kept it close, certainly. We've been hammering away up here and looking for our opportunity to pounce.
After rounding Gibraltar, conditions were more manageable for the fleet, which means fewer maneuvers. But fewer maneuvers also means fewer opportunities to make gains on the boats around you. So the standings remained pretty stable throughout that section of the Atlantic. Coming in first in the IMOCA fleet was Wholesome PRB. Second was 11th Hour Racing Team, and third, Team Malizia.
Well done. Well done. Merci.
Leg one is where you kind of work out where everyone is in the pecking order, and it's just been fantastic to pull off a win this early in the race. But man, did we have some conditions. I mean, some really tough conditions and plenty of work to do on the boat now before it heads off again for Cape Town.
First place in the Volvo 65 fleet went to Wind Whisperer. Second place to Team Yayo. And third, Austrian Ocean Racing powered by Team Geneva.
Our boat was a little bit better prepared, I have to say, because we did all the refit to do the full race, and we got a new set of sails. So the boat is perfect, we didn't break anything, the crew was great, so I think it's great to be here and winning.
We'll be back after leg 2 with another update from sailmagazine.com. For the most up-to-date information on the ocean race, visit theoceanrace.com.